Women as perpetrators of sexual aggression against men. Evidence on the prevalence of sexual aggression clearly shows that men are significantly more likely to engage in sexual aggression compared with women. However, this does not mean that women do not show sexual aggression against men. Whether or not women's sexual aggression needs to and should be investigated, given the predominance of male perpetration, has been a controversial issue. A balanced argument was offered by Muhlenhard, 1998, who saw the study of women's sexual aggression as important for three main reasons: to avoid research bias, to challenge gender stereotypes, and to acknowledge the reality of men's victimization experiences. At the same time, she warned about taking a gender-neutral approach, as victim and perpetrator roles are not evenly distributed between men and women. Following a small number of earlier studies, recent years have seen an increase in attention to women as perpetrators of sexual assault in relationships with men. In our brief review, we focus on findings from general population or college student samples, excluding analyses of female sexual aggression against other women. See above for prevalence data in same-sex relationships and studies of female sex offenders in a forensic context. A summary of the evidence showed that a substantial proportion of men are made to engage in non-consensual sexual activities by women. Fisher and Pina, 2013. Analyzing prevalence data from 4 large-scale victimization surveys conducted between 2008 and 2013, Stempel et al. 2017, concluded that female sexual aggression perpetration is more widespread than previously known. In one of the surveys, 2/3 of non-consensual sexual experiences categorized as non-rape, i.e. being made to penetrate someone else, sexual coercion, unwanted sexual contact, and non-contact, unwanted sexual experiences involved a female perpetrator. In another survey, female perpetrators were named in 28% of rapes reported by men. A review of 67 studies comparing male and female victimization rates by Deprater et al. 2018 supported this conclusion and identified 22 samples in 8 studies in which higher victimization rates were reported by men than by women. Few studies have addressed the question of female sexual aggression perpetration by collecting perpetration reports from women. One study that collected data from male and female college students in 9 countries of the EU found self-reported rates of women's sexual aggression against a man to range from 2.6% Belgium to 14.8% Greece. By comparison, perpetration reports by men against a woman range from 5.5% Belgium to 48.7% Greece, Crahy et al. 2015. Because female-on-male sexual assaults violate traditional gender roles for both women and men, they are even less likely to be reported than male-on-female sexual aggression. Women are likely to be more reluctant than men to report perpetration. See Chapter 4 for women's sensitivity to normative constraints against aggression. And men may feel their masculinity questioned by not having been able to resist an assault by a woman. Fisher and Pina, 2013. The finding that men are less likely to acknowledge a non-consensual sexual activity as a sexual assault if the perpetrator is female underlines this point. Artim et al. 2014. Evidence on risk factors for female sexual aggression remains scarce, but the available studies show parallels to the risk factors identified for male perpetration. Studies from several countries found a path from childhood sexual abuse to sexual aggression perpetration in women. Buffard et al. 2016. A high level of sexual activity was also identified as a predictor of women's use of force. Risky sexual scripts for consensual sex predicted women's sexual aggression against men in longitudinal studies. For vulnerability factors of men's victimization by women, the evidence parallels the findings for women's victimization by men. For example, alcohol consumption and engaging in casual sex were linked to male sexual victimization in the same way as it was shown to increase the risk of sexual victimization for women. Parallel paths from risky sexual scripts to sexual victimization via risky sexual behavior were found in several longitudinal studies. The need and potential of applying theories of men's sexual aggression against women to the understanding of women's sexual aggression towards men has been highlighted by Turchik, Hebenstreit, and Judson, 2016. Regarding the consequences of male sexual victimization by women, there is some evidence that men may be less adversely affected than women. In the sample studied by Struckman-Johnson, 1988, 27% of the male victims said that they had felt bad or very bad about the experience, while the corresponding figure for female victims was 88%. Further studies also found that men do not report strong negative reactions following sexual coercion by a woman. However, in a study with men who were coerced by women to engage in penetrative sex, participants rated the negative emotional impact of the experience at an average score of 6.9 on a 10-point scale. Qualitative follow-up questions confirmed the distressing nature of the experience for most participants. Weir, 2018. A comprehensive review of the literature concluded that male victims may show adverse consequences similar to those identified for female victims. Therefore, it would be premature to conclude that male victims are not strongly affected by sexual assault by women. Qualitative interviews have shown that many men are left severely traumatized by the experience of sexual victimization, e.g. Searle and Masters, 1982. Measures used in quantitative studies may not be sufficiently sensitive to detect the psychological impact of men's unwanted sexual contact with women. Moreover, the possibility must be considered that men may be reluctant to acknowledge a negative impact of being sexually assaulted by a woman, which would undermine their sense of masculinity. Current evidence on the adverse effects of sexual victimization on men rests entirely on self-reports of the extent to which they rated the experience as distressing. In order to clarify whether these responses genuinely reflect a low impact or a reluctance to acknowledge distress, self-reports need to be complemented by other indicators, such as a clinical assessment of physical and psychological symptoms.